doing the parts of the pumpkin. We just looked at the inside of a real pumpkin and talked about what all those parts were and why they are important. You are going to need your lap book. We're going to be gluing it on when we're done. We're actually going to be gluing it onto the back today. We're also going to need a glue stick, some scissors, some crayons, and most importantly, our two parts that we are going to be working on. So we have this one which says parts of a pumpkin. You can see parts and there's lots of little rectangles. And we're going to need those little rectangles with our words on them. All right, you might have a different version of this that has some spaces. That's okay, it's the same words. My first step that I'm going to do, I'm going to just cut out the excess paper off this one, just so I don't have to worry about that. And you guys will see I turn my paper instead of my scissors because that's easier for us to cut. Okay, so now I just have my list of words. I'm gonna very quickly review this list of words just so we know what they say. My first word that I have is seed. We have leaf, tendril, stem, pulp, skin, fibrous strands. So these are words that I probably will want to use in parts of my observations later if I notice any of these things. I then have my picture. You'll notice that this is a diagram. We have rectangles, and then if you follow the rectangle, there's a little line with an arrow that is pointing to some part of this picture. What we need to do is match up the word with the part of the picture that it belongs to, okay? So I'm going to start with, there are two ways you can do it. We can either start by looking at this and then finding the word and cutting it out and matching it, or we can start with the words and then finding the picture that matches it. Some of these I will say you're going to want to pay really close attention to where is the arrow landing. I'm going to start it with the word first, just because that way I don't have lots of little pieces floating around of my words, because sometimes they blow off the table and then I lose them and then I don't know what should be going there. And then if I can't find it, then I have to write it in. So I like to start with the word first. So my first word that I'm going to do is seed. I'm going to cut it off, so I'm going to just cut straight across this line. And my first word is seed. So I need to look with where my seeds would be. We know the seeds are in the inside of the pumpkin. So if we look, we're going to look for the arrows that are on the insides. So this is one, and it's pointing to something that is not a seed. So let's check the other. This one is landing directly on top of the seed. So I'm going to put glue in this rectangle because if I follow my line, it goes to this rectangle. We're going to glue it down. We're going to put seed. And before I do anything else, I'm not going to color the whole thing right now. I am going to color in one of these though, so I remember when I'm going through what it should look like. Again, we're being scientists and we want it to look real. I'm going to use my apricot color because seeds on pumpkins are pretty light. So I'm going to remember, I'm not going to do all of them right now, but I'm going to remember that my inside of my seeds need to be a lighter apricot color. Okay, my next word is leaf. Leaf. So we know leaves are not on the inside of a pumpkin. So we're going to be looking for something on the outside of a pumpkin. So when I look, I have up here, we should see my leaf. We have 3 different parts. Remember, a leaf is going to be big and green and it likes the sun. So when I look here, this is pointing right here. That is not my leaf. What about this one? This one is pointing over here in this big area. This would be my leaf. So I'm going to, again, do a quick line of glue. I want to make sure my words are also facing the correct way. And this is the leaf. We weren't able to look at a pumpkin's leaf because our pumpkins don't have leaves anymore. They are not on the vine. But a leaf usually, most times for most plants, is going to be green. So I'm just getting my normal green color. You could do your yellow green, just a shade of green, and you're going to color in the leaf. One thing about pumpkin leaves is they are big. Just like pumpkin plants, They're very big. They like to spread out a lot. This is part of the leaf right here as well. I'm gonna do this. So here's my pumpkin leaf. And this is pointing to one pumpkin leaf. If it was pointing to both of them, we wouldn't say leaf, we would say leaves. All right. Ooh, my next word is the one that starts with a T. It's tendril. Tendril. We talked about this. A tendril is part of a pumpkin stem and its leaves. And what it does is it kind of wraps around stuff and it holds that pumpkin into place so it can grow. So again, I know it's going to be on the outside. So I have this one pointing to here, or I have this one, which is pointing to this little curly Q right here. This is our tendril. So our tendrils are not very big. Other plants have tendrils as well. Usually climbing plants. They have little tendrils that they like to wrap around and they'll hold the plant into place. So tendrils also green. I'm just going to use my same green. And this is a really hard spot to color, so if you go outside, it's okay. So let's see what our next one is. Stem. Cut that out. Our stem, as we know, is on the outside. So if we're looking, we only have one more that's on the outside, and it's going to be that one. Our stem, if you remember, we talked about, a stem starts out green. I'll put my blue. A stem starts out green, but then it usually changes color to like a greenish brown. So I'm going to use my green still. I'm not going to do super hard, because what I am going to do is I am going to actually go over with the brown on the stem area. So I have my brown. I'm going to go back over it because it is a mixture of brown and green, usually sometimes beige. But as it starts, the pumpkin gets bigger, it's ready to be harvested. It doesn't need all the nutrients from the stem anymore, from that vine. And so what happens is the vine starts to die, and as it dies, it turns brown. So there's my stem. All right, let's see. So we have 1, 2, 3. These are mostly the inside. Okay, our next one is our pulp. Pulp. It's like oranges. You guys probably think of pulp when you think of orange juice. Some of you probably like orange juice with pulp. Some of you may not. The pulp of a pumpkin is that really thick area. It's that section where we can use it if you have a pie pumpkin or a sugar pumpkin to actually make pumpkin pie. So when we're looking at here, so I have like a thin layer and then I have this thick layer. This thick layer is my pulp. So I need to find the arrow that is pointing to this thick layer, which is this one. So my pulp is here. Another thing, if you remember, when we looked at our pumpkin, the outside of our pumpkin, the shell, is usually pretty dark. Well, it depends on the type of pumpkin, I guess. But our normal orange ones, it's usually dark, and then the inside is usually a little lighter. So for my inside of my pumpkin, I'm gonna do yellow orange. I'm not gonna color the whole thing, but I'm gonna remember that this needs to be lighter. So I'm gonna set this aside with my apricot because I know that's a color I'm gonna use again. All right, so 2 more words. Skin. So the skin is that protective layer. It's the outside, just like your skin protects you from things. Pumpkin skin also protects it. So I'm gonna look, I know it's not gonna go to the inside, so we know it's not that one. This one is pointing to this really tiny area right here, which is the skin. It's that little tiny outer shell that's hard. And it protects the pumpkin, again, from bugs, from any diseases. It makes sure that the inside and that these seeds can grow. So we just talked about my inside of my pumpkin is lighter. I'm gonna do this, my red orange, so it's a little bit darker. So we can see that there is a color change. I'm just doing that because I want to be able to see how it is a little bit different. So my last word, which we'll just double check, is fibrous strands. So if I look at here, it's pointing to this little hangy thing, which is the fibrous strand. We talked about how that is what is holding the seeds in. It's what helps the seeds grow into the pumpkin. It's what those icky, gross pumpkin guts are fibrous strands. But they are very important to the inside of the pumpkin. So fibrous strands are orange still. I'm gonna actually use my normal orange. And they connect to the seeds. All right, so we've done all our words. Our next step is to finish coloring. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish coloring. I also like to color the outside sometimes, just to give it a little bit more color. So we'll go ahead, you can color, and then when we're done, I will show you where we are going to glue this. Coloring. I did the inside part of the cavity, so the inside part where the seeds are. I did it the same as our pulp because it is a similar color. And I just did the outside. I just quickly did some color just because I like it how it makes it a little bit brighter. So our very last step is we are going to get our Lapbook. We have our front with our cover. We've done parts of our inside. So I am going to take it onto the back. And I'm going to put it at the top. We will be doing one more piece that goes down here. Get my glue stick. Just do my corners. And flip it over. Remember, we're going to put another piece down, so just press it up there. Press it down, rub your corners. I like to also just kind of flip it on this side, rub. Don't forget, put your glue lid on. Snap it shut. And you have your parts of the pumpkin. Hopefully you guys learned some interesting things today, and maybe you can go and share with someone something you learned about the different parts of the pumpkin and what they actually are used for. I can't wait to do our very last piece.